If we're not aware, intentional, or have a clear purpose in our life, then we will just operate on autopilot and do what is familiar. It's so very often we just move through our days even without thinking about the next steps we're going to take. Although by doing so, I think it's really clear how that's going to work out for us. We simply will remain stagnant and there's no growth that could happen in stagnation. Welcome back to Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to record today's episode and be sharing this with you all today. Welcome to a new season on the show. For my returning listeners, you might have noticed the little break we took between our last season. I shared on my last episode that I was intentionally deciding to take a little pause in the show for my first time in 5 years. So I want to drop in with a solo episode and talk about why I intentionally decided to take a short pause, and as well talk about the importance of leading your life with intention. So for my new and return listeners, first and foremost, I want to welcome you to the show. I want you to know that these conversations I bring on are meant for you. This is a space where you come as you are and just listen and learn from leading experts around the world about topics that inspire and encourage us to become our best selves so that we can live our lives more passionately and purposefully in all areas of our life. I wanted to kick off this season by coming back on the show to circle back to my previous episode where I closed off in sharing the 44 lessons learned that can radically change your life. As I shared my last lesson, which was honor the seasons you are in. You don't need to do all the things, be all the things all the time. I concluded that message and episode by announcing I was doing just that, honoring the season I was in. I intentionally decided to put a temporary pause on the podcast so I could give my full attention and energy to some really important things in my life. I want to be fully transparent in sharing with you what that was. So for anyone that has been following me on social media at Erica Lippy, you might have seen a glimpse of that. I recently got married and we eloped in Tuscany, Italy. Though I think it's important I share my intention to why I took a moment away from the show. I've openly shared on other podcasts and the show that one of my biggest struggles has been in relationships. Although I've done the work on myself and finally got to the root of why I struggled and what was blocking me from lasting love. I've had a 10-year, a 6-year, and then this relationship of 6 years to my now husband. I've always desired to marry the man that was right for me and dreamt of that day. And now, 44 years later, here we are. This was such a huge deal for me. I didn't even realize. Initially, we were hoping to have the wedding this year, but then decided to elope instead just for us and then do the wedding next year. So there was many months I dedicated myself to preparing, planning, researching, and then pivoting. I felt so much joy in the moment and the excitement of it all, so much so that I wasn't able to give my all to the show. So I decided to not divide my focus and instead allow myself the time, space, and grace to be in the moment and the blessing of such a sacred time for us. I had to think long and hard about this, as this show and my listeners mean such a great deal to me. Though I intentionally decided to embrace the season and give myself the permission to pause, which I gotta admit, I think a lot of us need to do that as well. Sometimes we just need to slow down so that we could speed up. This rang so true for me. Which leads me to our topic today, which is leading a life with intention. So first, let's unpack the meaning of intention. Being intentional means that you're consciously choosing the direction and focus of your thoughts, actions, and energy. It's about taking the time to identify what truly matters to you and aligning your daily activities to those values. So as I stated, you need to identify what truly matters to you. I know so many of us have formed interests based on others around us, possibly things that were introduced at a young age, and we just continue the interest out of familiarity. So if you're really wanting to create the next version of you and live more intentionally and aligned, it is absolutely critical to ask yourself some of the following questions, such as, what do I value? What lights me up? What matters most to me? Who do I want to be in this world? These are some really powerful questions that we need to ask ourselves, and this alone can bring so much clarity. Just to briefly share a story of my past, which I now kind of laugh about, to be honest. As I mentioned, so very often we form interests based on others around us. It's like we take on this other identity without even knowing we have. So I'll bring you back to a relationship I had when I was 13 to 23. My boyfriend was 3 years older, so I was very young and naive. And I looked up to him because honestly, he was older. And of course, I still didn't know who I was anyways. So I started to follow along in his interests. I got into cars, shooting guns, and who knows what else. Sure, I was really interested at that time in my life, but if I were to be honest, I realized through my self-discovery that so much of my life was led based on another's interest and not really clarity around my own. Although asking these powerful questions as I share with you, I was able to see who I was authentically and who am I wanting to become and grow into. Ever since then, which was about 7.5 years ago, I've lived intentionally and my life has truly changed. One of the biggest ways was meeting my now husband and building a relationship on a foundation that is rooted in truth, authenticity, trust, integrity, and love. So if I could really crystallize this point, if we're not aware, intentional, or have a clear purpose in our life, then we will just operate on autopilot and do what is familiar. It's so very often we just move through our days, even without thinking about the next steps we're going to take. Although by doing so, I think it's really clear how that's going to work out for us. We simply will remain stagnant and there's no growth that could happen in stagnation. As the late Wayne Dyer says, the secret of changing our life is in our intentions. Wishing, hoping, and goal setting cannot accomplish change without intention. What is needed is to shift from the inert energy of wanting to the active energy of doing and intention. Everything in your reality that exists today around you, someone first had a vision to create, except of course in nature where things naturally occurred. Someone had an idea, a passion, and or a vision that they wanted to bring into fruition. It rarely is successful if done haphazardly. When things are done intentionally, with meaning, with a purpose, and with great thought, things flow much more organically and with ease. So I want to share this visual with you. Think of your life as a masterpiece you are wishing to create. You have this blank canvas in front of you, and you have the choice to create whatever it is that you wish. You get to decide the colors, the theme, what exists on your personal canvas. Whatever is on this canvas, you are responsible for, no one else. You can't blame others for how it turns out because, after all, you are the creator. Now, what if you just started painting? Do you think the canvas would represent your life you intentionally wanted to create? It simply wouldn't, because without awareness, reflection, and intention before action, you're creating from a place of urgency, pressure, and happenstance. This is why I believe being intentional in your life is not an option. It is absolutely necessary. With every experience, you alone are painting your own canvas, thought by thought, choice by choice. And beneath each of these thoughts and choices lie your deepest intention. So in order to create a different outcome, we need to become aware of our intention. Setting our intentions is more than just setting goals. It's about being purposeful in pursuing your desires. Goals are specific milestones like losing 10 pounds or reading 20 books. Intentions are broader commitments to live a life a certain way. For example, instead of setting a goal to read 20 books, an intention might be something like focusing on personal growth and curiosity. Goals flow from your deepest intentions. And when you get clear on the why behind what you are doing, the how just becomes a lot easier, which is what this podcast is geared towards, so that you can live your life more passionately and purposefully in all areas of your life, with intention, with purpose, with deep meaning and thought. A big part of being intentional is letting go of distractions. By consciously choosing to eliminate distractions, you create space for clarity and focus so that you could walk a direct path. As you've probably heard many times before, what we focus on expands. So my hope for you listening to this episode today, you will think about how you are leading your life with intention. And if not, this is your permission to pause, reflect, and honor the season you are in. Maybe what you need most is the precious time to be intentional in what matters most to you right now. Our seasons will continue to change. As I pause the podcast so I could put more intention and energy and focus into something that was very meaningful to me. I had as well the intention to return to the podcast with a renewed energy and vision so that I could serve the show even more than I have in the past. So sometimes, my friends, we need to slow down to speed up. Why I wanted to share this episode with you today as we enter a new season on the podcast and prepare to end another season, which is the end of this year. A few years ago, I started doing something that was really helpful for me to enter the new year more intentionally. It wasn't about doing another vision board, but yes, I do like to do those as well. It was a process that helped me end the year off peacefully and enter a new year powerfully. It wasn't about setting some New Year's resolution that falls away after the first month. It was about reflecting, releasing, renewing, and creating, and then wrapping it with a pretty bow by setting my intention. Because this process has been so beneficial to me, I want to share it with you all. This is a 4-step process I call my intentional year. Through this process of reflection, you get to revisit the last year and get a full scope of what accomplishments you have, what lessons you learned, and what may have gotten in your way of achieving your goals. Moving through the process, we get to release any feelings or regrets and move into setting our intention for the next year to come. Because I have found this process to be so helpful as well, I created a free download for you to go through the process yourself so that you too could set your intentions for the new year to come. To grab this free read, just head over to the show notes, which is below, and get your immediate download to get started today. I just want to close off in saying, when you lead your life with intention, everything changes. Your energy is no longer scattered in a million directions. You feel more focused, more fulfilled, and less susceptible to distractions. You experience a deeper sense of meaning and joy because your actions are aligned with what truly matters to you. Life will always present you with the unexpected. And when you have a strong sense of intention, you'd be better equipped to adapt and make choices that are best for you. So as we transition into a new year, I challenge you to set time aside for this process. Give yourself the space to live with a purpose. And I don't mean just on January 1st, but every day of this year. So in closing, welcome to a new season on Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. As I said, this is a solo episode, but we will be bringing back interviews, continuing weekly from here. So if this episode has served you in any way, I just ask you to pay it forward and send it or share it on socials so that others can benefit as well. And please don't forget to subscribe on your favorite listening platform. Leave a kind review, as it always helps the podcast to reach more people like yourself. I also want to mention our show is on YouTube as well. So if you prefer videos, please check it out and subscribe to the show on YouTube as well. I hope this episode has inspired you to think more deeply about how you are living your life and how we approach the end of this year. Remember, living with intention is a daily practice, a commitment to show up for yourself and your dreams. So until next week, here's to living intentionally and making the most of every moment. Thank you all.